Hello and welcome to another segment of DSU Inside Perspective. I'm Carlos Holmes, and this is the show where we talk with faculty, staff, students, alumni, administrators, and even people from the outside about some of the things that are going on in the world or some of the great things that are going on at the Delaware State University. Today I have Patrolman Jorge Camacho here on my show. Finally got you on my show.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to talk about a very serious subject, active shooter situations, okay? Now, in 1999, we had the tragic and well-known Columbine shooting massacre. And I have come to conclude that the thinking as to what people should do if they are confronted with an active shooting situation in their building, wherever they're at, you know, what they should do in those situations has changed. Okay, am I correct in that?
That's correct. And you know, not only has it changed for people in the building, but it also changed for the police officers responding to the building. In those days, you know, police officers waited for the special units to get there to
the SWAT
team to confront those situations. And because of that incident, you know, lives were lost during that wait.
12 people.
Absolutely.
12 people died.
And then on top of the, well, on the other side of that, then of course the people inside the building, of course that being, you know, one of the first times they were ever experienced with that, they really didn't know what to do in preparation of that.
In such situations, most people think in terms of first responders as the police,
right,
the fire department, the
right,
paramedics, but who are the first responders in that situation?
Yeah, in that situation, the first responders are the people in that building, because they are the ones that are basically the target of this attacker. And so therefore they're the first ones to respond. And so when we talk about responding, you know, we talk about that avoid, deny, defend process.
Mm-hmm. Do you think people are spending enough time thinking about what they should do in such situations?
Not really, because in everyday life we get comfortable in our settings. And we're just comfortable in nature. And also, you know, the idea that it's not going to happen here, it's not going to happen to me, it's just prevalent in every walk of life. And so there's not much thinking about it. And so the idea of this presentation, the presentation that I've been doing, is to get the people to change that mindset to the what-if mindset, mm-hmm, no matter where they're at.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's just take this to an example. We have a group of students and a professor in a room. They hear gunshots, okay? It's clear to them they're in a situation. What do they do?
Right.
What are the options?
The options that we would like for them to do, obviously, is to avoid, deny, defend. Avoid would be finding an exit, a secondary exit, whether that's a door or a secondary door or a window. And then if that's not available, then to be able to barricade themselves in the room, so that prevents the attacker, not necessarily prevents the attacker, but makes it a lot more difficult for the attacker to get in there. And
okay. Now let's stop there, okay? Because this is the kind of thing you're talking about here, right?
Right, exactly.
They're taking chairs and desks and whatever they can find to block the door. But there's something wrong with this picture. Okay, and maybe this is a problem, maybe it's not. You say delay. This would delay the gunman from gaining access to the room. But I notice they are putting chairs in front of a door that opens outward.
Right. And so, although in and of itself it looks like it's problematic, and yes, the door opens outward, but not doing anything would make it very easy for that attacker to come in. So if the attacker opens up the door and tries to get in there, he's going to have to push those chairs and tables out of the way, and that's time that the attacker really doesn't have, because an active shooter is going to take out as many people, mm-hmm, in as minimum time as possible, so they're looking to go elsewhere.
So in that situation, really there's no choice other than to act, because there's really, in a classroom like that, there's no place to effectively hide.
Correct.
You know, you have no other access to get out of the room but that one door, right, so you got to act. So that's better than doing nothing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
And then, of course, you put yourself in a situation of an advantage point. So you don't necessarily want to hide at that point. You want to, if it's inevitable that the attacker is going to come in there, then you have to go to the next step, which is defend.
Defend. You got to defend
Right.
yourself.
Right, and that's when you have no other option. You've already tried everything else.
How does one defend himself? A guy's got a gun and he's coming in a room. How do you defend yourself?
Well, normally in a situation like that, when we're talking about a classroom, we're talking about one attacker in the classroom. There's 30 people in that classroom. So numbers dictate that, 30 against one, you would put yourself in a point of advantage, so that as he or she is walking in through that door, you would grab the gun, throw something at the person, distract them, and just overwhelm that person.
Let's talk about another situation. You had, and I brought him on my show because he just gave a presentation to our employees on this, on active shooter situations. And one of the things you did, you showed a video of basically a town hall meeting, and you had some commissioners or elected officials who were sitting at a curved rostrum, and then you had an audience of the public in front of them, and a guy walks in with a gun. He's got an axe to grind with the councilman. Right. And in the video, I noticed that some people, when he showed the gun and clearly showed there was a threat that was present, they sat in their seats, or some got up and just froze. Is this denial?
Yes. So Amanda Ripley, she authored a book called The Unthinkable. And in that book, she talked about 3 phases of what someone goes through when they're presented with that. And that is denial, deliberation, and decisive moment. And so denial being the first one, there are kind of 2 dynamics to that. One is called normalcy bias, where you start thinking, wait, this isn't happening, or if it's shots fired, you think it's firecrackers, or you think maybe that's not a gun. And so during that denial phase, which if you've already prepared for something like that, and that's what I talk about during my presentations, you don't spend too much time in the denial part of that phase. You say, okay, that's a gun. And now you go into deliberation. Deliberation is about, you've already thought about what you would do in a situation like that, from a standpoint of avoid, deny, defend, avoid being the first one. So you got to really know your exits, not worry about, if you're in your office, logging off your computer, not worried about grabbing your belongings, but running or getting away from that situation. And yes, you're absolutely right. When you looked at that video, they just sat there, and they were going through those stages. Of course, in my presentation, and the way I wanted the campus community to look at that is to start thinking about it before it actually happens.
Because if we have a so-called lockdown situation, it's not really locked down. I mean, there are rooms that do lock. Right. But there are rooms here on this campus that nobody can lock. Maybe you need a key to lock the door, right, and somebody has to know how to do that to get. So we're in a situation that it probably behooves us to think about these situations here on this campus.
Yep, that's correct, and that's the the premise, the actual purpose of the presentation is to get people to start thinking and get out of that comfort zone that we are all accustomed to. And so when we go into our offices or when we go into our workspace, we start looking at our workspace a little different than we did before, from a standpoint of, what if this happens? I can't lock that door. Where would I go? How could I lock that door? Because even though you might not be able to lock the door, you might have some makeshift things that you've already thought about locking that door, like grabbing a belt and wrapping it around the actual handle, or a door stop. If the door opens in, a door stop would clearly stop that door from opening. So these are the kind of things you think about beforehand.
Okay. So if students, faculty, staff have questions about how they should proceed in an active shooter situation, they could probably stop any of you guys and talk to you about it.
Absolutely. They can stop into our police station, talk to us about it. They can go on our link to the Delaware State University website. There we actually have a video. It's called Shots Fired on Campus. And we also have some handouts that they can print out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Patrolman Camacho, thank you so much for being here. We should try a drill.
We should.
Send somebody an email saying you have an active shooter in your place. Think about what you would do in this
That's
situation.
correct, even if it's a tabletop.
You take that to Chief Downs, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for being on my show, and thank you for joining us for another episode of DSU Inside Perspective. Everyone have a good day.